Yo, this is Steve Bloom, and you're watching Moana Nui Podcast. We'll be starting soon. Don't go anywhere.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining the Moana Nui Podcast. Excuse that extra noise. I am Dana. Of course, if you tune in for the show, you probably definitely see someone is missing. Moana is on her way. She is tied up with work, but she will be joining us momentarily. But before we get started for today's episode, I have a couple announcements. Of course, for the Moana Nui podcast, we always like to give some support to our indie creators out there. We have two indie projects that we know of that we want to give shout outs to. So you can definitely go and support. There's The Surgeon, number 1 through 5, currently on the Kickstarter going on right now. You can support that one by going to their site. You can be able to pledge for their Kickstarter. You'll find it in your comments. We also have our friend and fellow Ohana of the Moana Nui Podcast, Michael Watson. He has a Kickstarter going on with his brand called Vigilance. And you just go to the link that's in the comments of fskgo.com to pledge. There's a few days left on Vigilance Kickstarter, so definitely pledge today so you don't miss out on a lot of those bonuses they have with the Kickstarter. And of course, if this is your first time tuning in, let me introduce myself. I'm Dana. I'm the other half of the Moana Nui podcast. I am a event, cosplay, and con staff photographer. I'm a event planner. I do a little voice acting and a whole lot more. Have when she gets here is the founder of the podcast of the Moana Nui podcast, and she's a children's book author and so much more. Of course, on the fourth Thursday of every month, we have a special series that goes on called Rain Talks with Shae Reigns, LMSW. For those that are being introduced to her for the first time, she is a clinical social worker that wants to make change in the world her own way. Founder of Do More, Require Better, LLC, and the host of Rain Talks on the Moana Nui podcast. She is using these vehicles to shrink your head and expand your mind. Though most hate conversations about relationships of any sort, Shay started her hashtag 50% of the hashtag Do More Requires Better campaign to help get deeper into the personal issues we all have. On her show, she hopes to provide perspective, shifting opportunities, and hopefully help you redefine your life so the only battles you succumb to are the ones you deem essential to winning the war. And let me go ahead and bring the woman of the hour, Miss Shae Reigns, to the front of the stage. Hello, Shae.
Hi.
Thank
Always
you
a
for
pleasure.
joining us
Always a pleasure.
tonight. I'm sorry, what you say?
I said always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Exactly. And we're very excited about today's topic for that we are covering today. It's a topic that most people need to talk about, and I'm going to go ahead and put on the banner so y'all know how to follow Shae. But today we are talking about the speed of trust. And of course, a lot of times when we're talking about relationships, people automatically put into the bubble the relationship being a dating relationship, but they don't think of the relationships also that is marriage, friendships, even family relationships you have. So, Shay, what do you define as the true meaning of trust in a relationship? Shay, what do you
Everything. No, when it comes to trust, it's actually better to go with the definition first of defining what a relationship is. And just in the most simplistic terms possible, a relationship is basically the foundation of any interaction between yourself and another. And I didn't say someone else.
Yes.
I said another. Okay. It's important to make that distinction because we have relationships with things that aren't people. We have relationships with our cars. We have relationships with our computers, with our phone.
Yes.
We have relationships with things. And even those kinds of relationships are those that, to a certain extent, are also built on your trust. So on the day where you get up and you decide to try to use your phone and your phone doesn't turn on, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, you have to question what's going on with this thing. Now, granted, it's not the same kind of trust that you would have, let's say, with a person, right? But at the very least, you trust, let's say, your phone to work when you need it to work. Okay, so again, trust is, or not trust, but a relationship is the foundation of an interaction with another, whatever that other may be. And then to take it to my definition of trust, it's about being able to have confidence in that relationship. Okay? Trust isn't something that you necessarily put into something that you don't have a relationship with. I'm going to say that again.
Okay.
Trust is something that you put into, right? Notice I'm not saying give because I'm being very selective with my words, okay? Give, we're not giving it away. It's not a gift, okay?
Yes.
This is something that you put into another thing, okay? It's an element of yourself. It's an element of your personal being that you are investing in this other, okay? So when we talk about trust, we're talking about an investment of self into another or into a relationship. And you're not in your head, so I'm assuming we making sense. So
yes. Now, of course, there's oftentimes you hear people say, there's levels to trust. Are there truly levels to trust? And if so, what are they?
personally defined. So your personal levels of trust are going to be defined by your experiences. And sometimes we don't even know what those are. Sometimes we don't know what it is that someone, something has done to gain, earn, whichever level of trust we are putting into that relationship or interaction. So for example, this is a horrible example, but it's an important one. Law enforcement. Okay. If you see somebody wearing the uniform, hi Moana. If you see someone wearing the uniform, you assume to a certain degree that you can trust this person to protect and serve your safety. Right? Just by, it doesn't necessarily matter that they actually are people you can trust with your life and safety, right? Doesn't matter that they have the uniform, that badge, that whatever comes with a certain level of trust, right? Of confidence that they're going to do at the very least their job. Now, of course, those of us who are here know that that is not always the case because the uniform does not necessarily dictate who that person is.
Yes.
Right? Trust. And that is why I said horrible, simply, horrible example because we've seen the news, we've watched TV, what that actually means. But to a certain extent, we're supposed to be able to have that confidence, and we don't, right? So these are the kinds of things that it's not necessarily the person per se. It's not a relationship that you spent building, how you violated my trust. No, these are people who we don't know. We've never met necessarily, officer, whatever. But we trust that they're supposed to do their jobs. And over and over again, they a lot of them prove that they can't be.
Yeah.
You understand? And that's how it goes. Or when we trust a store or a product to, let's say, nourish us and provide food and whatever, and then that trust is diminished because there's a recall on lettuce or whatever it is that they recall. There are certain things that you think that you can trust out there.
Yes.
Right? You think you can trust these things. You think you can trust these companies. You think you can trust these entities. And then you can't.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really important to understand, I guess. I don't want to say accept, because another part of this conversation, and I'll get into this later, is about accepting, right? But it's really important that we understand what this thing, trust, really means to us as an individual. Okay, so we get to define that ourselves. What we trust, how we trust, and sometimes we don't know how it is that we come to those determinations. Is it going to be because we ourselves experienced something with enforcement to say these are not people that we can trust? Is it going to be because we've experienced it vicariously through others that this is someone who we can or cannot trust? Is it going to be because you're walking down the street and so you choose to trust that the sidewalk that you're walking on is stable enough for you to get from point A to point B? And you've had that experience your entire life. So you have no reason to wake up tomorrow and decide that sidewalk just isn't going to be safe. Does that make sense? So it's going to be based on whatever our experience and our understanding of who we are and where we fall in the world is.
Yes. Okay.
Did I answer the question?
Yes, you definitely answered that question. So as far as, of course, somebody may ask, how can I get someone to trust me?
That is a great question. The golden rule comes to mind. That whole do unto others as you would do, or as you would have done to yourself, or whatever the case may be. There's the don't do anything in the dark you wouldn't want light. There's a lot of cliches about the thing out there. But the really simple thing about getting people to trust you, the most important thing, at least especially from a therapeutic perspective, is be a person that you want others to be to you. So if you're the kind of person who does not trust, then it is reasonable to believe that others should not trust you. I'm a expand on that just because I think it's important. It's an important point there, because trust starts with self. Your experiences in life have led you to have a hard time trusting others. That also means that you have a hard time trusting yourself. Let me rewind that, because I want to make sure that I make the point really, really clear. If you have a hard time with others, it means you have a hard time trusting yourself. That is because if you can't trust your own decisions, if you can't trust your own taste in people, if you can't trust that whatever comes through another person, you'll be able to manage and get through for yourself, that means that you can't trust other people because you're not going to be able to handle it yourself. And you know that on some level. And so you don't trust you either. Ask me a question, Moana, because it looks like you have a question.
No, I'm just
She's taking it all in.
I'm just marinating on that statement. I'm like, oh, you're hitting so strong.
You paused extra hard on that one. Like you looked up in the camera, was like put your head down extra hard on that. So I had to, no questions?
No questions. I'm just marinating.
Okay. It's a really important factoid that I don't get to discuss quite as I guess blatantly or flatly, especially in session, because attacking people's self-trust is usually not to maintain trust, right? But on this forum, it's important to do the thing sometimes because I just assume if you're here, you might not be getting it anymore. Yeah, it's one of those things that I think is really important to understand, that your trust issues are not necessarily all about the external world. Don't get me wrong, human beings are cruel and evil, and pick a negative word, they probably fit into that too. As a matter of fact, I've made it a point to explain to every one of my clients, humans disappoint you. I'm a human being, so that includes me. Stick around long enough, and one day I will disappoint you, and hopefully you'll remember this conversation so that you understand that it's not necessarily that I'm doing something on purpose. It's just the nature of humanity. Human beings are wired to disappoint. We are going to fall short, and especially once you start putting human beings on pedestals, we will always fall off. What we do. We are imperfect beings out here. Okay? But your trust has to come from you. You have to define what makes someone trustworthy. No one can define or delegate or determine what trust is without your permission. So if you're deciding that someone else is trustworthy, it's because you have decided that you can trust yourself with them. The most foundational, basic, caveman kind of level where we don't use adjectives and stuff. We just, me hungry kind of thing. Real basic. If you decide you can trust someone, it's because you've decided that you can trust yourself with them. And the levels of trust come in with how much of myself can I trust with this person? So for example, with this audience that we have here, I am choosing to trust that if I hit a little too hard, this is the end, and y'all can go and put your angry, as opposed to I don't have extremely hard-hitting conversation the same way, where their recourse would be to sue me and cost me a lot of money in my insurance. So, very different. I can trust certain things in different forms. You understand what I'm saying? And so it's really important to understand differences in our relationships in that level, because there's levels, but those levels are determined by you and determined by how much you trust yourself in any given situation. Do I trust that I want to pay those exorbitant insurance fees if I should get sued for I don't know, hurting someone's feelings? Absolutely not. So I keep those on the light. On the internet, those things aren't quite the same. Nobody's really going to go and look for the malpractice suit. This is just a conversation on the internet. Drop your angry comments and, we'll duke it out. Whatever. It's a very different kind of situation here. And I have to trust that I can handle the angry comments or just, scroll past. Where, on the other hand, I have to trust that my professionalism will save the day, so to speak, in my private practices. So it's really important to understand yourself and to understand where it is that these things are coming, especially if what you're looking for is to be able to get someone else to trust you. It's about making sure that you yourself are trustworthy. And if you don't trust you, guess what?
They're not going to trust you either.
It's going to be like that meme with the dude. I don't know about all that. You have to trust yourself first. Or you trust yourself, easier it will be to, quote unquote, get other people to trust you. And let me also be very specific. Technically speaking, you're not getting anyone to do anything. They're just making the decision to do so. If you have to convince someone to trust you, you're probably already wrong. That's why I always, especially in relation with people, when people say, "Oh, trust me," and then they whatever it is they're gonna say, I'm like, so how much of what you just said was a lie?
Trust me.
You have to tell me the question first. It means that there's something in there that's probably not completely honest, or something that you yourself have a hard time to believe. So let me know where are we in this conversation?
Yeah.
Trust yourself.
Exactly.
First and foremost. And the rest will fall in line.
Now, when I would, of course, I will ask, how does honesty, expectations, and trust go hand in hand in relationships?
I'm going to repeat that just so I can make sure I'm understanding which trifecta we're talking for. You said honesty. I'm writing it down. Honesty. Trust. And expectations.
Yep.
So how do these three things work together? That's what we're asking?
Yep.
I feel like we should put a disclaimer right here. As a matter of fact, put two disclaimers right here. And all right. The reason why human beings will always disappoint is because the other human beings in the equation have expectations.
Okay.
As soon as you have an expectation, you are setting up a situation that will either cause the other person to meet your expectation or fail your expectation. And that expectation really has absolutely nothing to do with the other person. That's all about you. So, for example, going back to law enforcement, I expect a police officer to do their job. Sounds fair, right? That has absolutely nothing to do with how that police officer actually defines what their job is. If the police officer defines their job as protecting and serving white people, and they shoot my innocent black ass, well, guess what? It's their job, as far as they're concerned. And according to the courts, it's right. That's what it is. My expectation set someone else up to fail or disappoint me. I expected something having nothing to do with what it is that they actually believe. And so now I'm disappointed. That is not to say that we should not have expectations. That's just to say that our expectations should be taken with a grain of salt or a spoon of salt or an entire salt field. Okay, expectations should be understood just like opinions. Okay,
Everybody got it.
Expectations as well just be just like everybody got one. It's right up there with everybody got one. Okay, that's what your expectations are. We all have expectations. We are not always going to. Now, here's the next level. Honesty. Gonna go back to the police officer. If I say, hey, Mr. Police Officer, are you going to do your job today? And he says, yes. And then shoots me anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Again, was my question, what do you believe your job is? Did we go into depth in that conversation about what he believes his job is, who he believes his job is meant for, all of that, so that I could know exactly how honest or not his answer was going to be? For all intents and purposes, once again, he is honestly doing his job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me take it from the law enforcement. You decide to get married, right? Supposedly one of the highest forms of expression of love that there is, right? You get married. You go and you say your vows. Nowadays, people write their oaths or whatever, and protect or whatever, aren't necessarily what people go with anymore, right?
Yeah.
You can look at the statistics of, marriages and divorces and know that there's something wrong there. Or is there? Because again, we're talking about expectations, honesty, and trust, right? We go into these relationships believing whatever it is that we believe. But whatever it is that we believe is still based on our own experiences, our own definitions, our own level of trust, right? And then ultimately when we decide to enter these contracts, it's, I trust you to do this, 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 and this. But nowhere in that contract are we actually saying what we trust them to do.
Yes.
And if someone is, let's say, for example, as I've heard many times, marrying someone and then complaining about, but they changed, does that mean that a part of their contract was that they were never supposed to change? Did it actually explain that that person was never supposed to change? And then did that person who had that expectation of someone ever changing, did they have any actual connection to reality of how things actually work? That change is the only constant and the only guarantee in all of life? One of the biggest complaints that people have in relationships is the other person changed. And
they weren't the same person from 18
didn't you change?
Right.
Right. And that's one of those things that I do get to talk to my, and that's, you're supposed to change. As a matter of fact, if you haven't changed this conversation, I'm not doing my job.
Right.
You're supposed to be a new person basically every time you wake up.
Yes.
Every learned something new and adapted something different into your life and into your that is a little bit change who you are. Every interaction that we have changes who we are. If you spend 30 minutes in traffic in Georgia, you are a changed person by the time you get to where you're going.
True.
If you spend 5 minutes in traffic in DC, Lord have mercy, 5 minutes in traffic in DC, and I came out a very different person. And mind you, I was actually in that traffic about 2 hours.
Daily.
So
Daily.
after the first 5 minutes, I started feeling different. Okay?
Yes.
Change happens. Okay? So the only thing technically that you should be trusting to do is a change. If there's ever something that you're going to trust somebody else to do, is a change. They're going to change their mind. They're going to change their thoughts. They're going to change maybe the way they're dressed. Their bodies are going to change. I don't know about you, but I'm going to change my hair. Okay? Change is going to happen.
Yes.
So we have these complaints. Oh, they changed. Did you expect them to never change?
Well,
Did you believe that when they their vow that somewhere unwritten in there was I will change, and thus believe that because that thought you about their unwritten vow, right, meant that they lied? Is that where I'm asking the question? But really, that is often where it is. I'm so glad you change your underwear on a daily basis. That is a great practice to have.
because we know some people don't.
Change is supposed to
Yes. Shout out JD.
But yeah, you're supposed to change. You're supposed to trust other people to change. And hopefully in your relationships, whether it's your relationship with a significant other or your relationship with your phone, provide options and opportunity to change and grow together.
Yes.
Hey, significant, I see you're doing differently. Is this something that you learned? Can we learn this together? Amen. That's the whole thing. Give each other room and space to grow so that you can have that room and space to grow hope together. And guess what? If you grow and it is not together, it doesn't mean that you failed. I'm gonna rewind because that's not even a part of this, but I'm gonna rewind that moment. When you grow with or around another human being and not maybe at the same pace or in the same direction, it does not make that relationship a failure. The relationship is not a failure just because it ends. I feel like that's a really important thing to say since I mentioned it, because when it comes to having trust, especially in self, when we look at our relationships that quote unquote failed, those are the kind of things that make us feel that we can or cannot trust either ourselves or others. We have friendships that don't go the distance, so to speak, especially when they don't go the distance that we expected them to. We can often feel like, oh, I must be a terrible person, or maybe that person is a terrible person, or that person is toxic, or whatever of words you want to use, as opposed to, oh, I guess a different direction. Or maybe they grew in a different direction. We were just growing at different paces. That doesn't mean that something failed. It just means that it had the lifespan that it was supposed to help you become the person who you are in this moment. Because you might not even be this person that you are in this moment 5-10 years from now. But hopefully you'll be the kind of person that you need to be in a relationship that you have for the next learning experience, so that you can then, back on topic, trust yourself. Your expectations, thus, should more be geared toward you. What do I expect of myself? Well, me personally, I expect that I'm going to be honest, that I'm going to be kind, that I'm going to be as blunt with a pillow as gentle with my sword. Either one can hurt. I try to make sure that I balance those things, because if I have to use my sword, well, I'm at least going to cut you softly. If I have to hit the pillow, I at least make sure I make my point. So the expectation that I have of myself then translates to I can trust myself to do that, to meet that expectation. And then I greet the world as honestly and genuinely as I possibly can based on how I trust myself and the expectations that I have of myself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So how you were saying, there's some change, everybody changes. But it's often seen when someone says, well, that's just how I am. How does that affect one's trust and the relationship with others when they're just like, well, this is how I am, better accept it, this is how I am.
Okay. Let me change the language here a little bit. So what you're saying to me is my interpretation of this moment is that you're an asshole. What you're telling me is, yes, you are. Okay, so you agree with me. Thank you. Trust restored. I can trust you to be an asshole, and I can trust my opinion that you are one because you just agreed with me. And also, it doesn't have to be literal agreement. But when someone tells you who they are, you're supposed to believe them. So maybe you didn't know who they were when you met them. But once you say, hey, yada, 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 and they're like, just who, cool, I believe you. And then you shift your actions, your reactions, your expectations accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And that shouldn't necessarily reflect on the rest of humanity. Asshole is another person's version of kindness. Just depends on who you're interacting with. So one person's actions should not define the rest of them.
Definitely. Now,
I'm sorry, I just read the comment.
No. Yes, JD was asking, it's kind of a joke, but honest question though. Do you think there should be a limit on how many times your dinner date changes their mind on what to order? I think there should be, but I'm open to being wrong.
Yes. That's all I got.
That's all you got. It is up to you to set that limit.
Yes.
How much you can tolerate.
All things are defined by you.
Exactly.
Especially if you're paying.
Exactly. JD says he agrees. Okay.
I am. Yeah. Yes.
So, of course,
Correct.
how I would like to also ask the question: how significant is body language and eye contact with trust in relationships?
Well, I think we're talking about two different things in this case.
Okay.
Because body language, it's a form of communication. That's what we're talking about. These are forms of communication that we're talking about. People communicate in body language, people communicate in word, and people communicate in deed. And so it's important to be able to look at those things and properly interpret them for yourself, right? But again, going back, once we start looking at interpreting things, now it's not about the other person. Now it's about you. So if you choose interpret someone's hand gesture that looks like they're reaching out to, like, this hand gesture. Wait, camera there. And up.
Yes.
So
this, okay.
This could suggest, yes, I'm doing that. Some people says, shake my hand. To, let's say, maybe someone who's had some more unfortunate in life, that hand gesture might be the precursor to getting slapped in the face.
Mm.
It's all about intention.
Yeah.
So, gesture of friendship or you can also look like impending doom and violence to another. It's about interpretation. So, of course, it is incredibly important to recognize these things and to say, that person looks really shifty. But are they, though?
Mm.
Some people are just different. Their body language is different. In the same way that our verbal written languages are different, our dialects are different, the same thing can be said for body language. The same thing can be said for just about all of our forms of communication, specifically because it requires other people's experience to understand what that means, or to interpret, or to define what those things mean. So yes, it's incredibly important. Accurate, on the other hand, not necessarily. There are some micro expressions that exist that are universal, and those micro expressions are considered micro because they are really, 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 really small. Mm-hmm. So right now, and most of them are also unconscious, so it's very hard to do a micro expression consciously, but I'm gonna try anyway. So this versus this is sadness or approval. Micro, so you probably couldn't really see the difference, but I allowed the corners of my mouth to go down somewhat the first time, and then I allowed them to go up while my lips were still pursed the second time. Up, lips pursed, approval, but still not exactly acceptance. Downward is just displeasure. So those are some of those micro things that happen across pretty much all humanity. Microexpressions, they are a thing. But when it comes to body language, like example, right now, Moana is leaned in, she's holding her head in her hands like this. This suggests that she is intently paying attention. Doesn't necessarily have to be to me. She has something else really important going on in her background. But at least what we're seeing right now is I am paying attention. That's what this looks like. Right? Right now, Dana nodding. To us, that suggests agreement. That says, yes, I understand and I agree with what you're saying. Right? Certain things go universal. On the other hand, if I say something like, yes, I believe you. Of course, that is a really great thing that you're doing right now, and you are doing wonderfully. What am I actually saying?
It's like your actions is the total opposite of what you're saying.
Exactly. And that body language, that's where we get the I can't trust the words that are coming out of your mouth moment. Because the words that are coming out of your mouth don't match the body language. If you're saying yes and you're doing this, there's a part of your brain that's just like, please don't believe me. I really wish that the rest of me was as trustworthy as the body is, but the brain can only do but so much, and she's controlling the mouth. So I'm gonna just control the head and be like, no.
Yeah.
And literally that is in a lot of different cases exactly how that works. Your brain is being honest for you. It happens. You know, that's why in things like gambling or whatever, people have a tell. That's your brain being honest for you. If you are bluffing or whatever and you have a finger tick, that's because your brain is not comfortable with what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's really that simple. Our subconscious wants to be honest. Our subconscious wants genuine. Our subconscious especially wants the people around us to be able to trust and have confidence in us. If we cannot trust the people who are around us, we cannot be safe there. Yeah. And our brain ultimately wants to be able to be and feel safe. So a lot of times the brain will do things and cause things to happen in order to force, so to speak, honesty.
Gotcha. Now, of course, I'm going to go into a opposite direction. That sometimes, oftentimes, we kind of hear people say, I don't understand how the trust was broken between us. What happens when trust is broken, and why it's often people, they're like, I don't know what happened. I don't know why they don't trust me anymore.
That many different things, and it really just depends on what you're really asking. Are you really asking what's happening when people are saying that? Are you really asking what's happening when people break trust? Because those, for one thing, are two different questions. And two, based on everything else that we've discussed thus far, ultimately, and I want to be clear on this, ultimately, if someone, quote unquote, breaks trust, it's not something that they did. It was something that you expected that they fell short of. Saying by any shape or form that when people are hurt or whatever, that it gives others, free reign to do whatever, and it's the other person's fault for having the expectation or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I know that's what it sounds like I'm saying, but that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, in our relationships, we have, whatever kind of relationship you're talking about, we have these understandings, right? And most of them are unspoken. Most of them made up in our heads, right? You think that when someone says, hey, I want to be in a relationship with you, or hey, let's be friends, we go by our own definition of what that means, with no real connection to what actually define it as. When was the last time you entered a relationship of any way or of any form, whether it was with a person or with a rock, and you actually asked, hey, how do you define relationships before we enter this? When was the last time you actually did that? When was the last time you picked up the phone to random salesperson number 5 and said, hey, I know you're trying to sell me something right now, but how do you define this relationship so that I know how to proceed? No, instead of defining the relationship, you just hang up, right? And you expect that person is going to understand that it was because you either did not want to have that conversation, or maybe it was a bad time or whatever. Right? It's your assumption of what it is that you think just happened in there. On the other hand, the person on the other end of the phone who made the phone call is just like, this person must really hate my life, hate me, and they want me to die and all of that. All you did was hang up. Right? Because you did not have the conversation of what hanging up would mean to the other person. It's the same thing in our deeper relationships. We've never necessarily had the conversation of what does it mean for me to be the therapeutic voice on the other side of the screen, to those of you who are out here listening to me right now. We've never had that action. So whatever it is that you're expecting out of this is completely on you. I'm just over here hoping that whatever it is that I say makes sense enough that, you come back and listen next month. But that's the extent of the conversation of what our relationship is. It's not really based on what most people think is trust. So if I, quote unquote, break your trust, it's not going to be because I even understood what your understanding of trust it was. It's going to be based on my definition of trust. And I'm just like, I didn't do that. I didn't lie to you. I didn't steal. I didn't do anything. I just showed up. What do you mean I broke your trust? I showed up, I said my words, and I was as honest and true as I always am. Did I lie? No. But we didn't have the conversation. Actually properly define and completely honestly define. And let me tell you, there are times where you have had the conversation with someone to supposedly define what you wanted the relationship to be. But then you did not truly define what that was. Okay, we're going to be boyfriend and girlfriend, or we're going to be girlfriend and girlfriend, or we're going to just be homies, or we're going to be whatever. Okay, well, what does that mean to you? Well, that means that, we're going to be in a monogamous relationship together. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, you're not going to have sex with other people. Okay, cool. That's what, is that all that entails? How to interact with other women? No. Okay, so I can't have any of the female friends that I have now either. Okay, no. Okay, so can I have my no, you don't want me to hang out with guys either. Okay, so I can't hang out with women and I can't hang out with women. Okay, so you see, that's not how I define my relationships. I have to have relationships in order to be a fully functioning human being. I need to be able to have a relationship with my mom and a relationship with my friends and a relationship with my phone and my coffee table and my TV and my game controllers, because these are things that are important to me. To give up things that are important to me to be with you? Yes. Right? No, that's not how that goes. We don't have those conversations. We don't truly completely define things, right? Let things just go their course, and then we're shocked when things don't go the them to, because we set up these expectations without ever actually finding what we were expecting. Man folk and women folk alike. I expected him to do this, this, and this. Did you ever have that conversation? Well, no. Or she should have known this, this, and this. I mean, I told her I like this, this, and this. Why wouldn't she know that I like this, this, and this? Well, how much did you like it? Did you tell her that you require it daily? If you require being able to, what is it that people do these days that annoys me? If you require allowed to chew your mouth open and have food falling out of your mouth, then that's not going to work. But we never had that conversation. So I guess I got to be okay with it? No. I'm not supposed to just know that these are things that are required of you, nor are you expected to know what is required of me and then just accept it. Because that's the other part. Exactly.
How much did you like it? Yes.
Yes. Okay. These are the conversations that we don't have. If we don't fully have the conversation, and then we're like, I don't know why. What do you mean I broke trust? I was honest. Okay. And I'm not saying either that we have to have the entire conversation, because it's hard to have the entire conversation. A lot of time having the entire conversation and not enough time actually getting to experience the experience, because guess what? The rule changes. The rules change as we change, and we change every second of every day, whether we choose to or not. So today I might be highly annoyed. Actually, I promise I'm going to be annoyed by it tomorrow when people chew with their mouth open. That's the last many years of my life. I don't even like seeing babies do it. It just annoys me and grosses me out. That's a thing for me. Okay? That's been a thing for me for a really long time. It's going to continue being a thing for me. Is it a conversation that I literally have had with every person that I've ever been with? No. It's one of those things that even I'm just like, this is something that people should just know. Don't do that, because that's nasty. Right?
Yeah.
Is it way to form that we're going to wake up and be able to tolerate it because everything else about this human being is great? That might be a thing. And it might be the thing about that person that actually annoys me. And so when I say in this conversation that is a deal breaker, I will not tolerate that. Tomorrow, I might meet somebody who meets every other criteria on my list, and just so happens to do that. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I just won't want to meet. Right? That's how that works. Okay. So I'm not saying that you have to have all the conversations all the time, because the rules will change who it is that you're with. But I am saying that it's important to have some of these conversations at the very least. That way we can sort of kind of have some semblance of an understanding of what it is that we're getting into, and what it is that we might get out of. Right? And then moving further along, having the expectation of forever, when there was that one thing that was on the list then that has now, after 10, 15, 20, 35, 90 years, become, okay, watch you or have to turn my head away from Poppy one more time, I might turn my head away to grab the gun and then shoot you in the face. Because it's been 90 years and I'm still looking at you with your mouth open. See, I didn't change. Change. It's just it's 90 years, and I'm tired of having to turn away and not watch you eat with your mouth full, or not eat with your mouth full, eat with your mouth open. Okay, it's not that the person changed, just that their tolerance level changed, and that's going to happen too. Do I make sense? That's really the bare minimum.
True. Now, I'm going to go with one last question since we're getting to the top of the hour. Of course, I end up hearing this at a work level event when it was said that you can't control your trust score from others, but you can affect it through your actions. How true do you feel that statement is, and how can one gain or lose points with others?
99.9%. 99.9% true, I would say. And that last decimal is for those really weird outliers, the con artists and such, who are really good at reading people so that they do all the right things to fool you into believing that this is the person who they say they are when they're not. Okay. So that's what that one little is off. It's for those people. The professional liars. Okay. The rest of us novices out here, we're in the other percent, and I would say that we are the majority, and it is really important to understand that the greater majority of us are honest and trustworthy. So I mostly agree with that statement. And how do we gain points? Well, the rest of the conversation, it's really just about you trusting you and acting in a way that is in accordance with what you or who you would want to trust in turn. So if you believe yourself to be a part of the 99.99999% of people who are worthy of trust, then you should act accordingly. So let's see here. If I am a trustworthy person, would I lie? No, I guess I'm not lying today. If I am a trustworthy person, am I going to steal? No, I guess I'm today. If I am a trustworthy person, am I going to omit facts that may come to light later? Just no. I guess I'm just not going to omit these facts. If I am a person, or if I'm a trustworthy person, or if I'm a person who can live up to my own expectations, would I do something to deliberately mislead another person? No. So I guess that's just not something I'm going to do today. And then we expect others to see that and to act accordingly. Well, That is a trustworthy. I would like to trust that person. If I want to trust that person, then I myself have to be trustworthy for them, because they can't trust me if I can't trust them, and I can't trust them if they can't trust me. And so they ask themselves the same sets of questions that you just asked yourself. If I'm the trustworthy person, am I going to do A, B, C, and D? Are these things that a trustworthy person does? If the answer to any of those questions are no, then we're just not going to do that.
Mm.
If you want to be and build trust, become your own best architect and contractor. Yeah. I think that was a good one. I might write that one down.
Shae-isms.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, Shae. Of course, everyone, once again, thank you for tuning in for today. Definitely tune in on the 4th Thursday of every month, as you're seeing at the bottom of the screen at 7:00 p.m. when we have Rain Talks. Each month, as you will see, we have talk on different topics. If you missed any of our previous topics, because you want to know, how can I hear more? Go to our YouTube channel for the Moana Nui Podcast. You can click the follow. You'll be notified of any upcoming episodes that we have. But you'll see a channel on our when you go to our page on our YouTube site that has Rain Talks, and you can see all the past episodes right there. So definitely go check them out. And of course, as you see below, you can go to Rain O Change on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to be able to follow Shae on there. And also you can reach out and say, hey, I would like to book some sessions with you virtually. Can I go ahead and get some? Because as Shae says, if you're breathing, you need therapy. So go ahead, definitely reach out if you're looking for a therapist. If you like this honest conversation, definitely reach out, but also follow us on either our YouTube channel or our Twitch channel, also on the Moana Nui, so you can keep up to date and watch any of our upcoming episodes. So once again, Shae, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us today. And Moana, do you have any last words before we get ready to end?
I just wanted to say thanks to Shae for always bringing such great conversation and things for us to ponder. I'm still pondering on that trusting yourself one. But it's good to see you again. Yes, we will. Yes.
And as JD says, when she's dropping Shae-isms, it's raining shade.
Put it on the shirt. We're doing it.
I might write that one down. That's
raining shade.
Well, thank you everybody once again for tuning in. Please tune back in at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. That is in about 26 minutes. We will be having a wonderful panel of women writers that we will have a conversation about the path and from the good, the bad, and the ugly of being a woman writer in the industry. And definitely post any questions if you are a writer as a woman or a femme background and you are trying to get into that path of your career. This will be a great time for you to tune in, ask some questions to these amazing women that are going to be on this panel. So once again, everyone, thank you for tuning in, and everyone, will see you at 8:30 tonight. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care, guys.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then. When they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off, called themselves a republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No regard for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course. Cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No regard for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
I'm Steve Bloom. I've been a voice actor for more than 30 years, playing characters like Wolverine, Starscream, Tank Dempsey from Call of Duty.
With Bloomfox Studios, I've learned so much about myself.
Learning to breathe, to no fear, to getting ugly in front of Mike.
One of the biggest changes I've noticed, at least for me, is how much my confidence level has gone up.
Done an Eastern European video game, an e-commerce commercial, a documentary. If you're thinking about getting into voiceover, just do it. Jump in.